Hello everyone, it's Jess here and welcome back to another sketchbook tour. This sketchbook is filled with lots of paintings and drawings and I'm really excited to share it with you all today. So I actually began this sketchbook in 2017 and just recently finished it. And since it's a watercolor sketchbook, I originally kept it as a urban sketching sketchbook where I took it on the go and did paintings inside. And I'm really excited to have finally finished it, so let's get started. If you've watched my previous sketchbook tours, I love designing the cover and doing something a bit personal to it, so I just decided to put my name and practice some lettering. Once you open the front cover, I also like to write my full name, and then on the left I have some doodles that I did on black paper with a white gel pen, and then I collaged some washi tape on the right. It is super satisfying to sketch with white gel pen on black paper, and to fit with the theme of the sketchbook with the dark cover, I just decided to glue it in. Alright, now I did mention I did a lot of urban sketching in the sketchbook, and this was actually a panoramic view that I painted in a boat while I was on a little weekend trip. We pulled up onto an island and I just decided to get my watercolors out and paint from life. Since the sketchbook is a landscape sketchbook, I took full advantage of the panoramic view, so you guys will see a few long compositions. Alright, moving on, this is a painting I did and I have actually turned it into a bookmark. It's also watercolor. I really love the Payne's Gray color palette that I added with a pop of pink and also some details going down on the bottom with some white gel pen. And I really enjoy doing the long vertical compositions. Alright, on the next page, I did some floral studies, and these were also done in watercolor. I wanted to focus on a limited color palette, so here I used the greens that I actually mixed in myself. And on the page right next to it, I painted these tulips actually on a bus ride on my way upstate New York. When I'm itching to paint or create, there's nothing really that can stop me, so I managed to juggle around the watercolor palette on the bus and able to create this painting. I also painted the sunflower, and these actually were all started about 3 years ago, so you guys are gonna get a mix of some recent and some old little pieces I did in the sketchbook. On the next page are some studies I did of people on the subway. I loved using a brush pen to quickly sketch in some people that I see. And on the right was a trip I did to Lake Placid for New Year's, and I sat in my hotel room on a nice snowy day and drew this with colored pencils. The view is so beautiful and peaceful, so I definitely needed to capture it. Shortly after my Lake Placid trip, I took a trip to the warm side into Mexico, and this is a panoramic view of a painting I did in the lobby. I did quite some traveling, so you'll see some other paintings in here too. Here's a painting I did on the beach of the little bar in where I was sitting on the gazebo, and I basically just had all my watercolors with me at all times, and I just took them out and quickly caught the scene. You guys know I love drawing from life, and I also decided to challenge myself a bit and do some doodles straight from my head on this page, and I was really feeling colorful and happy, and I definitely think that the trip inspired that. I like to give myself a balance of doodles and painting from life, so you never know what you're gonna just create when you're just drawing and painting from your head. And speaking of that balance, that's exactly what I did here. I used a reference and then I kind of just created certain things out of my head and tried to mix those two together. I also had a lot of fun experimenting with pencil and how the watercolor shows through. I think it's a really nice balance as well. Alright, moving on is another painting I did in Central Park in New York City. I visited the Metropolitan Museum to look at some paintings that day, and on my walk home to the train station, I saw this beautiful tree in the park and decided to sit down and paint from life. I was super inspired after all the art that I took in the museum, so this is what I created here in this long composition. And after painting this tree for about an hour or two, I was walking further and saw this beautiful view that I created a sketch thumbnail for, and it was a beautiful sunset kind of gleaming through this path, and I had to capture that as well. I like to think of my sketchbook as a capture book for all the memories and moments I felt special to my heart. On this spread, I did some doodles on the left with my lines that I love to do and some art supplies that were beside me. And I guess I was feeling the blue a lot. And over here, I did a portrait of one of my friends who's a photographer, and I loved her look, the colorful dress, and her hair was just awesome. So I just decided to capture that in my sketchbook, and that's a mix of watercolor and markers. On this spread, I did a painting of the Williamsburg Bridge. This is in New York as well, and I sat right on the grass and painted this from life, and I really love how this one came out. I ended up using gouache for this painting, and I tried to focus on a little bit more of an opaque look for the painting. Alright, so moving on to the next page, this is a trip that I did on a cruise to Europe. This was the first day that we landed in Barcelona, and on the rooftop of my hotel was this beautiful view, so I just sat there and painted away. I really loved focusing on all the little details and my little crosshatch marks, and on the right side of that, I painted the sunset right on the top deck of the cruise. And just looking back at these paintings give me so many warm feelings and memories, which is part of the reason why I even do the sketchbook. After I look at these and if I close my eyes, I can just simply imagine that exact moment. Alright, on the next page was another painting that I did on the left. I sat right on the beach and painted the view right off the shore in Barcelona. And I just started with a quick sketch with my pencil and then went in with some gouache paint. And the colors were unbelievable, so that's what I tried to capture here. Now, right next to it was a portrait sketch that I actually did in my pencil. I was going to paint it, but ended up loving how it looked straight with pencil. And my goal was to try to stylize it a bit. On the next spread, I ended up buying new paints of the Daniel Smith watercolors, so this was the first portrait that I ever did using those paints, and I fell in love with their quality. And on the right of that was a little cartoon I did of myself on Thanksgiving, and I messed up the face, but you know, if you mess up a face, just put sunglasses over it and you're good. But I love eating, so that's kind of what I tried to do in that illustration. Over here, I did a little greeting card gouache painting, and I ended up scanning it in, and this was just around holiday time for some family. And here I did a painting of one of my friends from art school. She is also an artist, and I decided to use gouache, and I loved her look. I loved the earrings, the glasses, and the headband, so that's what I did there. Some more portrait work here on the left. I practiced some more watercolor, and I tried to do a man so that I'm not only doing girls. And here's when I was just starting out with getting on the flow of YouTube, and I did this oil painting for an expression practice video, and I gessoed my sketchbook and then I went in with oil paints on top. Alright, moving on to the next page are some doodles that I did here. As you can see, they got very, very detailed. And honestly, I don't even notice this happening. I kind of just sit and therapeutically doodle away. And on the right of that was a day that I spent in Barnes & Noble doing some children's book research, and this was actually a mom and her son sitting right in front of me, and she was reading him a book, and I found that moment so sweet and special, so that's what I decided to capture here. On this next spread, I was experimenting with a limited color palette with just acrylic paints. I'm not quite sure where the inspiration came from, but I kind of guess these were doodles as well. And I wanted to use this pop of color and try to create a more flat look. I do love experimenting in different ways to see how things happen for me, so I find that my sketchbook is a great place to do that. Here are some more urban paintings that I did. I did a little thumbnail sketch of a scenery. I was actually out on vacation camping, and this was a man reading a book right by the lake, and it was just a beautiful scene, so I decided to capture that. Whenever I'm anywhere, my eyes are just drawn to specific things that I see around, and then I have to put them in my sketchbook. So here, I love the glowing rocks so much, so I decided to do a close-up of it during golden hour. And to stay on track, I did a little swatch of the colors, and then I did a small thumbnail to get my composition down. And the main goal was just to capture the overall mood and translate it into my painting. On this next spread, I practiced some more gouache and acrylic, and I did a tonal painting where I wanted to focus on the hair to be in these funky shapes, and I guess I was feeling blue again. I really liked the outcome of painting on brown craft paper. Okay, so on the next spread, I decided to do a study in crayons because I thought that Crayola crayons were always a great tool. And on the right of that, I actually planned out my next sketchbook that I had, the mixed media one. You guys saw the sketchbook tour. So this is where the cover originated from, and here it is on the left, so if you want, you can check out that video. Up next is another panoramic drawing that I did in my sketchbook, and the yellow actually seeped through from behind and it ended up looking like a sun, so I actually liked that. Something that I thought was a mistake would be beneficial, but I started off with a little thumbnail, and I did this from life from where I live, and prior to going urban sketching, I gessoed off the paper and I wanted to paint it, but then I absolutely loved the way the sketch looked, so I just kept it as is. And on the same day, I came across some trees that I thought looked like little characters, so I transformed them into these character designs that I did on the spot. And I don't know, trees actually feel like they have a personality to them. So that's what I experimented with there. And for the painting next to it was a little illustration I did for Valentine's Day. And I thought it would be really cute to do these two snails kissing. So here I did a thumbnail sketch and some swatches. And the final painting was done in gouache. On the next spread was some sketches I did of people in a cafe when I was having breakfast, and I played around with some colored pencils and watercolor. And on the right was a drawing I did in pencil, and then I went over in watercolor by the beach early in the morning, and it was a great way to start my day. On the left of this spread are some fruits that I decided to practice in a limited color palette with super bright saturated colors. And I wanted to focus on a color palette that is not your typical palette for the fruit. And on the right over here, I did a view from my balcony, which I moved into a new apartment, and that was the view. Here was an idea I had for the longest time of something called citrus clowns, and I wanted to create these fruits in basically characters of clowns. So I had a variety of citrus fruits, and then I turned them into these little characters. And looking at these now, I feel like they would be really cool stickers, so maybe I'll turn them into some. Alright, moving on to the next spread was an urban sketching day that I did in an airport. I actually went flying in one of these planes, but I decided to do a little sketch of this plane facing forward and then a plane facing to the side. You guys may have seen this painting in another video where I mentioned urban sketching, but I basically gessoed off the paper prior going to sketch, and then I did the painting right on location. Whenever I know I'm gonna go painting, that is basically the procedure that I take. So here I had some other gessoed pages, but I wanted to experiment how they would go with markers. So I tried out these different portrait sketches, and I particularly loved this one. And again, I tried to restrain myself with the color to try some new color palettes out. And on the next spread, the two paintings are from my art studio vlog video. So if you guys haven't checked it out, you can check out that video where I show you guys how I paint this. So I used references that I took myself from locations where I visited where I live, and I decided to paint these two paintings to, of course, capture that moment. I do have an obsession with sunsets, so I decided to do this painting with gouache, and that way I was able to capture all the bright colors. And speaking of bright colors, I wanted to experiment with some more markers here where I did athlete figure action drawings, and the paper was gessoed prior to that as well, and I want to just show you guys how cool the texture showed through, so this is definitely something I'm going to experiment with in the future. And for this last sketchbook spread, I used the mechanical pencil to do some pencil drawings of eyes and different age groups and different genders. I also did a study in glasses. And on the right of that, I decided to do a portrait where I tried to elongate certain features and push the style a bit in my own direction. And rather than just drawing from the photo, I wanted to bring my own little spice into it. And that is all, guys. So I was really happy to finally finish this sketchbook. I had a lot of pages left over from the few years, But I finally finished it and I'm so glad that I shared it with you all. I really hope you enjoyed this video and I really hope it also inspired you to create in your own sketchbook. Remember to capture things that you love and just have fun with it. I did lots of fun paintings, on the go, urban sketching, so that is something that I really highly recommend. Stay creative, guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!